Welcome to another episode of the MMA Lock-Cast. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMA LOTN. This week we're going to be going over UFC 230, which is headlined by Derrick Lewis and Daniel Cormier for the heavyweight title. It's going down at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Big event. You know, every year they do a November event at MSG for the last 2 years now, or actually this will be the third year. And they always bring something big, something something monumental to the event in MSG. But this year it kind of seems like they struggled. We had a lot of fights fall through. We had the whole Sijara Eubanks and Valentin Shevchenko debacle, and we also were possibly going to have Nate Diaz and Dustin Poirier, and potentially for a 165 title or 165 pound title. But personally, I'm kind of against the whole 165 thing, but that's just a whole discussion for another story or another podcast. Today, we're here for UFC 230, and we got Daniel Cormier fighting Derrick Lewis in the main event. It came together pretty late, especially with Derrick Lewis fighting just under a month ago at UFC 229. But we've seen guys do that before. You know, they get a victory at one event, and the next event kind of needs a little bit of saving, so they jump in. The one that comes to mind is Tito Ortiz back when he beat Ryan Bader at UFC 132. Kind of shocked the world, or at least shocked the hardcore MMA nerds when he got that victory over Ryan Bader. And then he comes back next event to headline against Rashad Evans at UFC 133 in Philadelphia. That fight was actually supposed to be Rashad against Phil Davis. Phil Davis pulled out, so Tito Ortiz came in and saved the day. We all remember what happened with that. Rashad Evans pretty much steamrolled him. And I think we're kind of going to get the same result this time around with Cormier and Lewis. So I'll get into that later into the podcast. First, I just want to quickly go over my last event. It was UFC Moncton. I had one lock of the night play and one dog of the night play, which both unfortunately whiffed and missed. Very tough. My lock of the night was Volkan Oezdemir. It's unfortunate that it got past the first round, and after it got past the first round, I was very skeptical and kind of nervous, let's put it that way. I really thought he'd be able to touch up Anthony Smith in that first round, and Anthony Smith would not be able to handle the power. He did. I felt like there were ways that Anthony Smith or Volkan Oezdemir would have been able to land a little bit cleaner, land a better shot, maybe put Anthony Smith out that way. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to. Anthony Smith was able to withstand anything that Volkan threw at him. Especially, I think he dropped the first two rounds as well, but he had the gas tank to get the submission in the third round, and Volkan Oezdemir kind of just quit. He got tapped out by a neck crank earlier in his career, and then in his last fight, or 2 fights ago, I think it was, he lost to Daniel Cormier, and now he has an L to Anthony Smith. So he's probably just going to fade into the oblivion of the light heavyweight division. He would probably be a top 7 to top 4 or top 5 heavyweight, considering the roster right now. And Anthony Smith, on the other hand, you're talking about a guy that's pretty much put himself in position for a title shot. There's a lot going up at the top. We got John Jones and Gustafsson fighting for the belts at the end of the year. We got Daniel Cormier, who's still technically the champion. So, if Anthony Smith is cool with sitting out a little bit, he might maybe get a shot summer of next year. But it is what it is. Unfortunately, I lost my lock of the night play, which was Volkan Oezdemir, and then my dog of the night play, which was a kind of controversial fight, or at least decision. I had Justin Ayari 1 unit at plus 150. That lost. It was actually a unanimous decision for Stevie Ray, which I believe there was a 130-27 in there and 229-28 for Stevie Ray. But then when I looked at MMA decisions, there was a lot of people that actually scored it for Ayari. Watching the fight live, or at least watching it back, I was very split on it. You guys can go back and see my timeline. I was very split on who I should be giving the rounds to. I gave the first round to Ayari. The second round was close. The third round, the first minute or two, Stevie Ray was doing a really good job of putting his punches together and ending it with kicks. He landed a lot of good leg kicks and a good spurt within like the first minute and a half or so. And then Ayari, slowly but surely starts chipping away as well. He landed a lot of good straights in that third round. Not rocked or dropped Stevie Ray, but he definitely stumbled him at certain points in that third round. But The judges saw it for Stevie Ray, and I'm not going to make a big deal about it. You know, I took an underdog shot. It was only a 1-unit play. I'm not going to bitch and moan about it. It's a loss, and ultimately UFC Moncton is minus 6 units. So, you know, considering the fact that I'm about plus 29 units or so over my last 14 or 15 events now, you know, I've been on a pretty good run. You know, the lumps are going to come. If you guys check out my Bad MMA Tips graph, you know, it looks freaking great, other than the little bit of stumbling in the last 2 or 3 events, especially with that Bellator loss with Chael Sonnen as my dog of the night against Fader. So, UFC 230, I'm looking to come back. I got 3 plays for you guys. I got 2 lock of the night plays and 1 dog of the night play. They're all props and 1 method of victory, and I'm very confident in them. So I'm definitely going to be breaking down those ones for you guys today, as well as the rest of the card. So yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Lock Fight League has been going great as well. If you guys haven't been tuning in, it's on Wednesdays and Sundays around 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We got a lot of great discussions going on in there. We got some guys talking some shit. It's great. It's fun. I love that I have it going on. So be sure to check that out. I'm always tweeting about it on Wednesdays and Sundays, so make sure you guys keep your eyes out for that. But without further ado, we are here for the UFC 230 fight card breakdown, and that's what I'm going to provide to you guys. So let's kick it off for the bottom of the card. We got Adam Wieczorek. Remember last fucking podcast, I kept butchering his name, so I'm going to keep doing that this time, but I'm going to keep calling him Adam W from now on. So Adam W is taking on Marcos Rogerio de Lima. Kind of a fight that came together last minute, at least Adam. He stepped in to replace Ruslan Magomedov, who also has been out for a long time, and it would have been great to see him come back, especially to a division that needs as much help as possible. Magomedov kind of really showed, you know, he could be a force to be reckoned with in this division. Again, it's especially with the fact that it's a museum of a division, like I always say. So, this fight we got De Lima against Adam W. Starting off with Adam W., talking about a really tall guy, 6'5". He has an 81-inch reach. He's coming off a victory over Arjun Bhullar, who just got a victory last weekend. You know, he got that omoplata in that fight. He's not really known as a guy that, you know, can withstand the heavy shots and striking that a Rogerio de Lima could bring into this fight. You're talking about a fight that's currently, I'm going to be using odds from Bookmaker. It's sitting at minus 240 for Adam and plus 190 for Marcos. I think that fight, that line should be a lot closer. Maybe people are a little bit oversold on Adam after he pulled off the omoplata, but it's going to be interesting to see how he deals with the power striking of Marcos Rogerio de Lima, who has a boatload of finishes. I believe he has 12 finishes in 15 fights, so especially knockouts as well. So you got heavy power on those hands. You know, Adam can be hit. Adam is 10-1 at the moment, or 9-1 at the moment, and I think that De Lima is going to be able to put his punches together very well. I think he's going to be able to rock at him. I think he'll be able to stay out of any type of crazy submission threat, even though he did get, you know, Von Flood choke in his last fight against OSP, but he was getting beat up in that fight pretty bad, and I don't know if Adam W. is going to be able to put on the same type of beating that OSP was able to. Marcos de Lima has really bounced back and forth from heavyweight, light heavyweight. He even fought at middleweight at one point, but in his last 2 fights, he's missed weight for his light heavyweight fights, and now he's back at heavyweight. So maybe he can put together a couple wins up here. I think he's definitely a very live dog in this. I don't have an official bet on him myself, but I'm going to take him to win this fight. I think a lot of people are just oversold on Adam at the moment right now due to that, you know, recency bias, as I like to call it. Especially with that win over Arjun Bhullar. But I don't know if he's going to get that W over Marcos this time around. So I'm going to take Marcos Rogerio de Lima by first-round finish in this fight. Next fight we got up is Brian Kelleher against Montel Jackson. If I were to give you guys a list of guys that I don't really like in this sport, I don't know why. Like, I'm sure Brian Kelleher is a great guy, but I don't know what it is. I just don't like the guy. I bet against him in his last fight against John Lineker. You know, that was about 5 months ago when he got KO'd. A lot of people thought that Brian Kelleher was a live dog. Stylistically, I guess I can see it a little bit, but when you get touched by a guy like John Lineker, you're not going to be able to continue to implement your game of, you know, jumping in, throwing a couple shots, and getting back out quick enough to not eat any of Lineker's shots. But, Lineker showed what's up. Once you feel those hands, it's going to be a lot different than you expected it to be when you stepped into there. With this fight, he's dealing with an 11-inch reach disadvantage against a guy in Montel Jackson. Brian Kelleher's style is very, he likes to move a lot. He likes to hop in, pop off his couple shots, and then get back out. His game is very movement-oriented. However, in this fight, he's going to have to learn to close the distance against a guy that's very long for this 135 division. Montel Jackson is very young in terms of fight years, and he has a lot to prove still, in my opinion. He's only 7 fights into his UFC career, 7 fights into his pro MMA career, 26 years old, 75.5-inch reach for a fucking bantamweight. He's 5'10", 75.5 inches. It's ridiculous that he's able to have that big of a reach at one of the the smallest divisions in the UFC. So with Montel Jackson, he's coming off a loss to Ricky Simon, kind of a close fight in my opinion. I'm not completely sure if he took that fight on short notice. It was about a 2-month turnaround, just less than a 2-month turnaround from his Dana White Contender Series fight, where he won by a 3rd-round TKO. I think this fight is a much better suited for him. I think he'll be the stronger guy in this. I think his striking will be able to catch Brian Kelleher on the way in when Kelleher tries to close the distance. He has a piston of a left hand. I think it's going to catch Brian Kelleher a couple times, and I wouldn't even be surprised if we see Montel Jackson get the finish again. He's pretty much finished every fight in his career except one, besides the loss that he has to Ricky Simon. So I think he has the power and capabilities on the feet to give Brian Kelleher some issues. So I'm actually going to be taking Montel Jackson here. I think he gets the finish maybe in the 2nd or 3rd round, where Brian tries to get a little bit overzealous, maybe even gets a little frustrated when he's trying to close the distance against Jackson, and that's where he's going to get hit. Whether it's elbows or straight punches, I think that Jackson is going to be able to hand Brian Kelleher another L, unfortunately. But not fortunately for me, I mean? Like, I don't really like Kelleher. I'm exactly not sure why, but I just think that a lot of people are overrating him at the moment. Next fight, we got Shane Burgos against Kurt Holobough. This fight, I think it's at minus 300 for Burgos, plus 230 for Kurt Holobough. Personally, I think this fight's, the line is a little wide. Burgos is coming off a loss to Calvin Kattar. He got finished by Kattar in the 3rd round back at UFC 220 in January. Kurt Holobough, another striker, so this should be an entertaining scrap in terms of, we have a Tiger Showman guy in Shane Burgos, and then with Kurt Holobough, we got a very, grizzled veteran. He has over 21 fights. He had a vicious fight against Raoni Barcelos in his last fight back in July. That fight was crazy. Very back and forth fight, and then Raoni Barcelos was able to finally put the finishing touches on it in the 3rd round. Both guys are coming off 3rd round TKOs, and I think this, puts together a very entertaining scrap. I tend to lean Shane Burgos in this fight. Obviously, it's unbettable in my opinion, especially with Burgos up minus 300. I think it's much closer than that. I think that Burgos' diversity of strikes, and I love that Tiger Showman style. I don't know what it is. They're very... we'll see another Tiger Showman guy later in the fight, later in the card with Julio Arce. But this fight, I'm very intrigued with the way that Shane Burgos comes back from his first loss. I believe that is his first loss as well. Yeah, that was his first loss. And if he comes back with some sort of vengeance, if he's looking for a knockout, especially, I think Kurt Holobough took a lot of damage in that Raoni Barcelos fight, and he's coming back relatively quickly. This is just about 4 months after he got put out by Raoni. So very entertaining fight. I personally am not going to bet on it. If anything, I would entertain the fight to not go to a decision, but I'm not even going to entertain that. I'm going to take Shane Burgos in this fight. I think he gets the 2nd round finish, just puts it together a little bit better than Kurt Holobough, mixes in the kicks and some spinning attacks here and there. With Burgos and these Tiger Showman guys, anything is kind of possible. So I got Burgos in this fight over Holobough. Let's go with second round finish. Next fight is actually my lock of the night play, or one of my lock of the night plays. I got Matt Frevola against Lando Vannata. My personal bet is for the fight to not go to a decision. I got beautiful odds at -165. I'm sure you guys can get something similar or something roughly around there right now. The fight itself is -300 Vannata, minus or plus 230 Frevola. I just want to see what the current fight doesn't go to decision prop is at. So it's sitting at about -180 or so. So I think that's still a pretty good price. With Matt Frevola, he's coming off a loss, or his first ever career loss, to Polo Reyes back at UFC Fight Night 124. He got knocked out in the first minute, but with Frevola, this guy seems like a guy that like carries his heart on his sleeve. He got rocked a couple times within that first minute and didn't really go to the resting base that he has. He still was sitting there or standing there in front of Polo Reyes trying to throw bombs. We saw this in the Tay Edwards fight this past weekend, where these wrestlers love that. I said it last week too. These wrestlers love that overhand right, that power hook, and those are kind of the only shots that they throw. They throw with heat, whether it's to close the distance to get into grappling position, or it's just to try to knock a motherfucker out. And I think that's what Frevola is going to continue to do, even though he lost his last fight. Lando Vannata, very unorthodox striker. He's kind of underwhelmed in his UFC career since that fucking barn burner that he had against Tony Ferguson in his debut. But since then, he's rattled off one win, one draw, and 2 losses. The David Tamor fight, Tamor is a very high level striker, and you can't really knock Lando Vannata for losing that fight. In his last fight, a lot of people took Lando Vannata, and he, laid an egg against Jacare Close, who was able to use Lando's unorthodox striking against him. He let him throw his spinning shit, he let him throw his unorthodox striking, but he stayed calm. He waited for the better chance to enter in after those unorthodox strikes. He landed the better shots, closed the distance, and there were plenty of times where Jacare Close was kind of just leaning on Vannata and just winning the fight based on, I guess, control in a sense. In this fight, Frevola is a grappler as well. Lando Vannata has some really good grappling credentials, but I think both guys are kind of going to just throw it out the window. I think both guys are going to keep it standing. If somebody does get rocked, I don't think that either guy will have much issue keeping the fight on the feet, and that's where I think that somebody's going to end up getting the finish. I'm sure Vannata is very, he really wants to put on a show. He wants to get a highlight reel knockout to get himself back into discussion as one of the top lightweights out there. Especially after that amazing performance he put up against Tony Ferguson. So I was really close to placing a bet on Matt Frevola as a dog play, especially Matt Frevola inside the distance, which was plus 550-ish. But I don't know. I don't know if I can trust the chin of Matt Frevola and his reckless abandon. And I think that ingredient in this fight is why the fight doesn't go to decision is so sexy to me, and which is why when I saw it at -165, I'm like, this is a no-brainer. So I took the fight. Doesn't go to decision. -165, 5 units on that. And for an official prediction, fuck it. Let's go with Matt Frevola. I think, no, you know what? I'm going to go with Lando Vannata. Lando Vannata via second round TKO. You know what? Make it first round. I think they're going to go to war. I think it's going to finish in the first round. And we unfortunately see Matt Frevola's chin be the downfall of him once again. So unfortunately, Matt Frevola is going to take 2 losses back to back, and I'm going to take Lando Vannata. Personally, I wouldn't bet Lando Vannata at these odds again. -300 it is. Roughly -300 according to bookmaker. Again, fight doesn't go to decision is my play, and I think that is the smart play for this fight. Next up, we got Lyman Good against Ben Saunders. Ben Saunders just keeps doing the damn thing. He fought Jake Ellenberger back in June, where he got the finish. I bet the fight doesn't go to decision on that. That was fucking great. I think it was -160 as well. So, great in that aspect. I bet the fight doesn't go to decision. And his last fight against Sergio Moraes, that went great as well, even though he got finished in that. And in this Lyman Good fight, I think the fight doesn't go to decision again, but the odds are just way too wide. Right now we're looking at minus 578 for Lyman Good and roughly plus 450 for Ben Saunders. But in terms of the fight doesn't go to decision, we're talking about minus 350, and you guys already know my ways. I don't like betting anything that's worse than minus 350. So I didn't even think about touching that, especially with all the two plays that I already got. So I think that Lyman Good has the power and the stand-up ability to just put Ben Saunders away. Unfortunately, I think we're going to see Ben Saunders go to sleep, take another 2 straight L's, and this just might be the last one for Ben Saunders, in my opinion, at least in the UFC. So, hello Bellator, hello PFL. Ben Saunders is headed your way. I'm going to take Lyman Good by first round KO. Moving on to the next fight is my dog of the night play, actually. We got Sheymon Moraes against Julio Arce. Julio Arce is probably one of my favorite prospects in the UFC right now. I say prospect very lightly because this guy has about 16 fights, 2 fights in the UFC, 1 fight in the Contender Series. The Dan Ige fight was a decision, but other than that, he's been finishing his guys. I actually bet on him in his last fight against Daniel Tamor, and that cashed for me pretty easily. Round 3, I probably should have taken that inside the distance as well. So in this fight against Sheymon Moraes, I'm taking Julio Arce inside the distance at plus 247. I think there's a lot of value on that. He's a very dynamic striker. He's another Tiger Showman guy, just like Shane Burgos. Dynamic striker, great submission game, can catch chokes and darces, which is hilarious. Oh, sorry, does he even have a Darce choke? I don't know why the fuck I think he has a Darce choke. Maybe it's because his name is Julio Arce, or Darce, whatever the fuck you want to call it. But he has an RNC in his last couple submissions, so he's always looking for the neck. But his striking is definitely there, and his pace is there too. And against a guy like Sheymon Moraes, who barely just squeezed out a victory over Matt Sales in his last fight, considering all the eye pokes and all that shit that happened in that fight, I think this is a fight where Julio Arce can push the pace and capitalize on a gassed out Sheymon Moraes in the 3rd round. Sheymon was still throwing heavy shots in that 3rd round against Matt Sales, but I don't think Matt Sales had the extra gear that Julio Arce is going to have in this fight. So I think that Sheymon Moraes, it's going to be a pretty even fight in the first 2 rounds, but once Sheymon Moraes starts sucking wind, I think Julio Arce kicks it up a notch, takes over the fight. I think he either gets a choke or he can get a TKO in this as well. I think Sheymon Moraes has been finished. I don't even think Sheymon Moraes has been finished. Yeah, duh. He got Anaconda choked by Zabit back in November of last year, or so, over a year ago, and then he got finished by Marlon Moraes back in WSOF in 2015. So Julio Arce, I think it's going to be a 3rd round finish. I think he just overwhelmed Sheymon in that 3rd round. The first minute might be a little sketchy with Sheymon throwing some power shots, but I think that's going to work against him, and Julio Arce is going to, have the smarter game plan, put together his punches correctly, and then maybe even get a choke over Sheymon as well. So my pick is Julio Arce 3rd round submission, and that's actually a bet of mine as well. Julio Arce inside the distance, so make sure you guys hit that as well. Next fight, the people's main event, the fight that everybody has been waiting for. Sijara Eubanks against Roxanne Modefarri. Currently the odds sit at minus 540 for Sijara Eubanks, plus 420 for Roxanne Modefarri. Sijara is pretty much a stand-up fighter. Her record currently sits at 3-2. She's lost to Caitlin Chookagian and Aspen Ladd, while she has wins over Roxanne Modefarri, Deanna Bennett, all in exhibition belts on the Ultimate Fighter Season 26. But as of late, she just beat Lauren Murphy back in June. So Sijara Eubanks, she's fighting a very gristled vet in Roxanne Modefarri, who has over 36 fights now. You know, Roxanne, you know, she's just a pioneer. You know, she may have some good grappling, which may give Sijara a little bit of trouble, but I highly doubt the fight gets there. I think Sijara is just a younger, more powerful, stronger fighter. She's going to have the better technical stand-up as well. I think that she just beats up Roxanne Modefarri on the feet, and I think she just ekes out, or not eke, but like I think she wins a pretty decisive 30-27. We might even see a 30-26 in there. Roxanne can take some fucking punches and she can take a beating. So I think it's going to be hard for Sijara to get out of her, or to get Roxanne out of there. But it's just a fight for Sijara, I think. So she might even get the winner of Shevchenko and Joanna, unfortunately. Maybe not unfortunately, considering the fact that this flyweight division is still very new, and she technically should have been in the final. In the finals of that Ultimate Fighter. Unfortunately, she missed weight, and now Nico Montano, who is the former champ, got the victory over Roxanne Modafferi that night and took home the belt. So unfortunately, she's going to have to fight Yuan or Valentina next, but you know, this is what she wants. She wants to be the best in the division, and it's only up from Roxanne Modafferi, which is pretty low on the totem pole. So I'm going to take Sijara Eubanks by decision, rough, maybe 30-27, 30-26. Next fight, we got the return of Hick Diaz. Jason Knight taking on Jordan Rinaldi. This fight currently sits at minus 265 for Jason Knight and plus 210 for Jordan Rinaldi. Personally, I think that Jordan Rinaldi is a bit underestimated by a lot of people. I bet on him in his fight against Alvaro Herrera. I got some pretty decent odds in that fight. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I truly I think that he has a good shot in this fight against Jason Knight, who's also underwhelmed in his last couple of fights. You know, Jordan Rinaldi has only lost to Abel Trujillo back in 2016, and then his last fight he had the unfortunate task of fighting Gregor Gillespie, and we all know what happens when people fight Gregor Gillespie, especially in his last 10 fights. So you know, he had a Von Flue choke in his Alvaro Herrera fight back in 2017, August of 2017. He's a strong wrestler. He has some good submission game, or he has a good submission game. With Jason Knight, this guy's very unorthodox. So he has a great guard game, a very offensive guard. Unfortunately, he's coming off of 3 losses. You know, he looked like a world beater when he, you know, was on that 4-fight winning streak with wins over Jim Allers, Daniel Hooker. Fucking Daniel Hooker. He beat Daniel Hooker, Alex Caceres, and Chas Skelly. But now he's rattled off 3 straight losses, unfortunately. So he's also Ricardo Lamas, Gabriel Benitez, and Makwan Amirkhani. A split decision in his last loss against Amirkhani. But you know, we're expecting a lot better from Jason Knight. He had a great run. He has a very unorthodox and pressure style. I love his offensive guard game from his back. I think it's going to give guys a lot of trouble. And I think in this fight against Jordan Rinaldi, we might see that. We might see Jordan Rinaldi get the takedown here, and Jason Knight work a very offensive guard and give Jordan Rinaldi some problems. So, as a fan of Jason Knight, I think he's going to win. Not even as a fan, I truly think that he's going to win this fight. But Jordan Rinaldi should not be a plus 210 underdog. I think it should be lined a little bit closer. But I still think that we see Jason Knight get the victory here. So I'm going to take Jason Knight by submission, second round. Next fight, I believe this is the curtain jerker for the main card, if I'm not mistaken. I might be completely off, but this is just according to Tapology. But we got Derrick Brunson against Israel Adesanya. Probably one of the most unanimous and consensus picks on this card is Israel Adesanya, who currently sits at minus 350 on Bookmaker, while we got Derrick Brunson running in at plus 250. So the knock on Israel Adesanya has obviously been his grappling game. Unfortunately, out of his last 3 UFC fights, we haven't really seen anybody give him much trouble with the grappling. They haven't been able to implement it. Brad Tavares has had 5 rounds, but he got beat up pretty bad throughout those 5 rounds and wasn't able to implement it correctly. I think Derrick Brunson has the credentials and the strength to do it, but I don't think that he's going to be able to implement it. I think that Israel Adesanya is just going to piece him up on the feet, and I wouldn't even be surprised if we see Adesanya put out Derrick Brunson. Adesanya is only getting better as well, which is the scary part. You know, he's 13-0 currently or sorry, 14-0 currently. Very big win in his last fight against Brad Tavares, which was a main event. Went all 5 rounds. Crazy striking. I love this guy's striking game. I think that he's going to pose a lot of problems to Derek Brunson. I think that Derek Brunson is not going to be able to close the distance enough or well enough to be able to get Adesanya on the ground. And Adesanya has shown, significant improvement in his takedown defense from fight to fight. So I think we just see a better Israel Adesanya in this fight. I think that, Derek Brunson's wild winging shots and getting those KOs, that's not going to happen in this fight. He managed to knock out Lyoto Machida in 2.5 minutes. He managed to put away Daniel Kelly. Fucking Daniel Kelly. He put away Uriah Hall. Put away Sam Alvey. Put away Ron Carnero. But then, he lost the decision to Anderson Silva. He got finished by Robert Whittaker. And then he got finished by Jacare Souza in his last fight. So, when he fights a guy that will put up a bit of a fight in terms of striking or technical striking or even just brute power, he seems to falter. But then when he can easily bully some of these guys that may be mentally weaker, like Uriah Hall, or old fucks like Daniel Kelly, or guys that are just beyond their prime, as in Lyoto Machida, he's going to be able to beat them. But Israel Adesanya, different beast, different monster. So I think that we see a pretty decisive victory for Israel Adesanya here. I'm actually going to take a first round finish because I think Brunson is going to overexert himself. He's going to overreach, and I think he's going to leave himself open to get KO'd. So I'm taking Adesanya first round finish. Next up on the card, another banger of a fight, and is actually my lock of the night play, my second lock of the night play as well, is Karl Roberson against Jack Marshman. I had a friend of mine, actually, one of my friends that I watch almost every UFC event with, kind of sent me a screenshot of this card, and he saw this fight on the main card, and he's like, who the fuck are these guys? And yeah, I'm talking about a guy who watches pretty much every UFC event with me, so he's a semi-hardcore, if you want to call it that, and he didn't really have too much knowledge on these guys, but I promise you, it will be fireworks, and it will be very fun to watch. Karl Roberson, 6-1 currently, coming off a loss to Cesar Mutanche, who was able to get him into an arm triangle choke. But Cesar Mutanche is just a fucking beast of a man. I don't know how the fuck he fought at welterweight. He looks enormous at middleweight, and was able to pretty much overpower and take down Karl Roberson at will. He eventually worked for that arm triangle choke and was able to get the finish of the first round. But Karl Roberson has Jack Marshman this time around, and Jack Marshman is a guy that's going to be, swinging for the fences. We know the type of style that he brings to the game. He's a brawler. He doesn't really like to evolve from anything past that. And I think in this Karl Roberson fight, we're going to get a banger. We're going to get two guys that are going to swing for it. If Karl Roberson does get touched by Jack Marshman, I think he'll go for the takedown, and I think that he has the grappling advantage in this fight to be able to get the choke over, or to get a submission over Jack Marshman. Jack Marshman, he's 22-7. He's definitely had his share of losses. He's been choked out by Antonio Carlos Jr. in his last fight. So we definitely know that he can be tapped. And I think a guy of Karl Roberson's finesse and work that he can do with his all-around MMA game will pose problems for Jack Marshman. There's a reason that Karl Roberson is a minus 285 favorite over Jack Marshman, who currently sits at plus 225. Some people may say that the line should be closer. I kind of agree that it should be where it is at right now, but the fight doesn't go to decision. That's where the money is. That's why I'm playing that prop. I think that either or, whether Karl Roberson puts Jack Marshman out or chokes him out, or if Jack Marshman lands that lucky punch and puts Karl Roberson out, one of these guys is getting the finish, and I truly believe that the fight doesn't go to decision is probably the safest play on this card. I got it at minus 210. Right now it's sitting at minus 205, so it got even better. I don't know why the fuck people are betting this fight to go to a decision. So minus 205, not too far off from minus 210. If you guys are able to get it, I'd highly suggest jumping on that. I think it's the safest play on the card, and we're going to see a war between these two guys. In terms of my prediction for this fight, I think that Roberson's going to get this fight to the ground. I think he's going to play a little bit safer, get the fight to the ground, keep it out of distance for Marshman to get the victory here, and I think that he locks up a rear naked choke and gets the finish over Jack Marshman. Let's call it first round. Moving on to the next fight, Dave Branch against Jared Cannonier. So Dave Branch was actually supposed to fight Jacare Souza. We saw what happened with that. Luke Rockhold got injured, so he had to step out of his fight with Weidman. And now we got Weidman Jacare, and Dave Branch is taking on Jared Cannonier, the Killer Gorilla. Much more of a favorable fight for Dave Branch, in my opinion. I think he gets steamrolled by guys that have a stronger will, a stronger grappling game. Dave Branch is a legit black belt, but Jacare is next level black belt. And I think the power that Jacare carries in his hands would have given Dave Branch a little bit more pause as well. So in this fight, Jared Cannonier, heavy striker, he's coming down to middleweight. I believe this is going to be his middleweight debut as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how he looks on the scales, if he makes weight, and how much of a factor it may play in his gas tank. Dave Branch, he's a vet. He's got 26 fights, 22-4. He had his first run in the UFC a while back. Unfortunately, I believe he got cut after he lost to Husmar Paul Arce. And then since then, he's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-2 since his first stint in the UFC. So that's nothing to bat an eye at. Unfortunately, he lost to Luke Rockhold in his second last fight, but he got a victory over Thiago Santos in a fight that I'm pretty sure that he was the underdog in. He shocked a lot of people. He put Thiago Santos out. And a lot of people thought that if Dave Branch was to win that fight, that he would win by submission, but that wasn't the case. He was able to put the power on Thiago Santos and get the victory in that fight. In this Jared Cannonier fight, I think he's going to play a little bit more safe. I think that he's going to take Jared Cannonier down. I think he's going to be able to work his jiu-jitsu and get a choke. Jared Cannonier hasn't been choked out by anybody, but there hasn't been really anybody that he's fought that possesses the same jiu-jitsu threat that Dave Branch actually will be able to put against him. He's on a 2-fight losing streak right now. He just lost to Dominic Reyes by finish back in May, and then before that he lost a decision to Jan Blachowicz, which I want to forget about because I actually played Jared Cannonier in that fight, so I just want to get that off my brain. But so I'm actually going to take Dave Branch. I think he gets a second round submission, plays it very safe, kind of tries to tire out Jared Cannonier, again, a guy who's coming down in division. So I think Dave Branch just zaps him of his energy and then eventually chokes him out. I'm going to say latter half of the second round. Co-main event time, we got Chris Weidman against Jacare Souza. Like I was saying before, Luke Rockhold unfortunately had to pull out, and now we get Jacare versus Weidman, which is a fight that should have happened. That should have happened by now. Jacare's been in the UFC for many years now. Weidman's been doing his thing. These guys have both been at the top of the middleweight division for the last several years, and now we finally, the stars have finally aligned. It's a very intriguing fight. Jacare obviously has the edge in jiu-jitsu, but Chris Weidman's grappling in jiu-jitsu and wrestling is up there as well. So I think that he has the defensive jiu-jitsu ability to stay away from anything that Jacare might throw at him, unless Weidman gets clipped by some crazy shot, gets rocked, and then finds himself in a choke. I think that this is definitely Chris Weidman's fight to win. Chris Weidman currently sits at minus 180, while Jacare is at plus 145. And I think that's roughly where the line should be. I was highly considering playing Chris Weidman as a lock of the night play. However, with the two that I already have, I think it was just overstretching myself, and we kind of saw what happened at the last pay-per-view when I overstretched myself. If I hadn't played Volkov, we probably would have had a profitable night. But this time, I learned my lesson. I'm going to try to keep it as disciplined as possible. So I'm going to pass on Chris Weidman, but I truly think that he wins this fight. I think that he kind of he's going to be able to put his punches together a little bit better. I think he's going to have the better stand-up. Jacare is going to start to fade in the third round, and I think that with the combination of Chris Weidman's wrestling and his stand-up, I think it's just going to be too much for Jacare, who's also, getting up there in years as well. So Jacare is a little bit more on the latter half of his career. I think Weidman still has it to make a run at the title. I think a matchup against Robert Whittaker could be very favorable for him. So I'm going to take Chris Weidman by decision. I think his combination of his wrestling and striking is going to give Jacare fits, and it's going to allow Chris Weidman to be the more dominant one in this fight. So I'm taking Weidman by decision. Main event time. Derrick Lewis against Daniel Cormier, a fight that was put together less than a month ago. We should have had Nate Diaz against Dustin Poirier. You know, at least according to all hardcore MMA fans, that should have been the main event. However, Dustin Poirier pulls out. We don't get that fight at all. 3 rounds, 5 rounds, 165, 155. We don't get it at all. Fuck it. And I think this is the best audible that the UFC could pull, considering you know, how many strings they have tied up. You know, they got John Jones, I heard, was probably the first guy that they wanted to headline this card. Unfortunately, he's not ready, so he's going to be headlining the card at the end of the year. There is no fucking way the UFC was actually going to come into MSG with Valentina Shevchenko and Sijara Eubanks as the goddamn main event. You know, I love that tweet that Scott Coker put out with Kermit the Frog just sipping that iced tea when he saw what the fuck was going on with Sijara Eubanks trying to headline this event. But UFC, you know, you got to give it to them. Sometimes they corner themselves in these spots, and they get it together, and we get a fight like Derrick Lewis and Daniel Cormier that we never thought we'd ever see. You know, Derrick Lewis has quietly put together a really good streak. You know, he, as much of a stinker of a fight that he had against Francis Ngannou, his only loss in the UFC since is Mark Hunt. You know, he lost to Sean Jordan back in 2015, but since then he's 2-4-6-8-9, 9-1 against Alexander Volkov, top heavyweight, against Francis Ngannou, who just came off a fight for the title, against Marcin Tybura. And say what you want, these are all fights that he was losing, and then comes back in the third round and wins. He's had a ridiculous amount of fights that have finished in the third and fourth round. Shamil Abdurakhimov, Marcin Tybura, Alexander Volkov, Victor Pesta. You know, if he doesn't knock these guys out in the first round, he's probably going to get beat on for about 2.5 rounds. And then something just turns on in his head, and he just goes for the kill. And by that time, his opponent is probably a little bit more gassed and doesn't have the ability to get out of these the way of these punches. And unfortunately, they find themselves with Derrick Lewis's fucking chin on or punch, fist on their chin, and they're taking a nap. So just ask Alexander Volkov, who, you know, was 11 seconds away from getting a fucking victory. This fight, however, you're talking about Daniel Cormier, probably top 3 pound for pound greatest fighters of all time. His only kryptonite has been John Jones. You know, I really think that he should have spent his entire career at heavyweight. The only reason he went down to light heavyweight when he came to the UFC, or 2 fights after he came to the UFC, was because of his boy Cain Velasquez, who also has, you know, he has had a lot of trouble getting into the cage. He's had a lot of trouble, you know, battling injuries and actually fighting. So Daniel Cormier, he's like, you know what, Cain, you're not fighting. I'm gonna go up there and try to be champ, and he did. He knocked out Stipe. He has a light heavyweight title. He has the heavyweight title, and now he's defending it for the first time against Derrick Lewis. You know, everybody thought that he was going to be defending it against Brock Lesnar in the first quarter of next year, but you know, shit happens. This is I think stylistically, this is a very easy fight for him. He does a really good job of rolling with punches. He does a good job of dealing with guys that have heavy knockout power, in Volkan Oezdemir, in Anthony Rumble Johnson twice, even though Johnson seemed to have thrown that fight in the second fight. But you know, I think DC's fight IQ, his boxing acumen, you know, he does a very good job of dirty boxing in the clinch. He does a very good job of moving, again, rolling with the shots, any big punches. But I don't think that's necessarily going to come into play in this fight. I think he might toy on the feet for about a minute or so, but he knows, and everybody knows, that he needs to get this fight to the ground. And I don't think he's going to have much trouble getting Derrick Lewis to the ground. And a lot of people have had issues keeping Derrick Lewis down. I don't think that DC will have as much. I think Derrick Lewis may get up from the first or second takedown, but I think it's the third, fourth, fifth takedowns that are going to take it out of Derrick Lewis. That's going to allow, you know, Daniel Cormier is going to have the better gas tank, more power or more energy, and we're talking like 3 minutes into the fight, 4 minutes into the fight. I think Derrick Lewis will be zapped by then, and I think that Daniel Cormier is going to get mount. I think that Derrick Lewis is going to roll to his belly, and Daniel Cormier is going to sink in the choke. I think it's going to be as easy as that. There's a reason that Daniel Cormier is currently a minus 775 favorite. There's a reason that Daniel Cormier inside the distance is minus 500. That was actually going to be one of my lock of the night plays, but I'm not playing anything that's at minus 500. Besides a Hail Mary fucking lottery winning punch from Derrick Lewis, this fight is Daniel Cormier's. Apparently he's coming into this fight with a broken hand as well. That just shows you how much confidence he has going into this fight, so it can play against him, and the fact that he might be overlooking Derrick Lewis. But all of his opponents, all of his 12 opponents in his last win streak that he has going on right now, know not to let the foot off the gas with Derrick Lewis. There were plenty of times that Alexander Volkov could have finished Derrick Lewis in that first round and in that second round, and the fact that he didn't led to his demise at the end of the fight in that third round. And I think Daniel Cormier is just too smart, he's too talented, he's too skilled to allow this to happen to him. And I think that he gets the first round sub. I truly think that he's going to, within the third or fourth minute of the fight, he's going to have Derrick Lewis's back and he's going to sub him. I think it's as easy as that. No ifs, ands, or buts. Derrick Lewis his power is the only thing that he has. His skill is not there. He has a huge heart. That's one thing you can't knock from him either. But DC is just another level of fighter. It's Daniel Cormier, John Jones, and then everybody else. Or you could say John Jones number one, Daniel Cormier number two, and then the rest of the roster. Not even like that division. The rest of the roster. These guys are just so far above and beyond these guys. And I think it's really going to show in this fight against Derrick Lewis. So, good thing for Derrick Lewis. He's getting paid in this fight. He's going to get a huge paycheck, obviously, even as a challenger. I'm sure he'll get at least $200K, $250K. Hopefully it does well for pay-per-view buys as well, so he gets a piece of that too. But this will probably be the pinnacle of his career. And unfortunately, he's going to have to take a first-round loss in this. So, I'm taking DC first-round submission. So that pretty much wraps it up for UFC 230. Just once again going over my bets. I got Karl Roberson and Jack Martian. Fight doesn't go to decision at minus 210. Currently sitting at minus 205, so make sure you guys jump on that if you can. I also have Lando Vannata, Matt Frevola. Fight doesn't go to decision at minus 165. That's up to minus 180 right now, but I think it holds a lot of value at that number as well. And then my dog of the night play, I got Julio Arce to win inside the distance at plus 247. I only got one unit on that, but hey, I might even drop another unit or 0.5 units on that because I'm very, very confident in that. It's definitely not it's not smart to play Julio Arce straight up as he's about minus 300 right now. There's not enough value there in my opinion, but I think there is definitely value on him to win inside the distance, so make sure you guys look out for that. That's pretty much it. This might actually be the first video one that we're going to drop out for you guys, so I'm happy that you guys are watching and tuning in on this. My man Big Rob is always hooking it up for me. He's always doing something, whether it's the freaking sign we got in the back right now, whether it's the poster that we got up on this other screen right now. He's making it so easy for me, and I can't thank him enough for putting this together for myself. But this is only number 3. We're going to keep going and going and going and keep growing this thing as much as we can. And I'm glad that I can give you guys these breakdowns on a week-to-week basis. And we're in the heat of the UFC schedule for 2018. I believe this is the second of 9 straight events that they have for the next coming weeks. So I can't fucking wait to continue to break down these fights for you guys and help you guys cash as well. So make sure you guys tail. The next 3 events are free, so you guys don't have to worry about paying or anything. Just check my Twitter timeline at MMA LOTN. And all my bets are there for you guys in my pinned tweet. And they will be for the next 3 events. And if we go on a 3-event winning streak, then I'm going back to tout. So I'm hoping that I can make you guys enough money right now where you guys chip in the $20 once I start charging for the picks again. And it's not that much considering how much I can help you guys win. So www.mmalotn.ca, got all my stuff there for you guys. I got the podcast post on there. I got my picks up there. I'm going to be having Lock Fight League. Everything's going to be housed on the Lock of the Night website, so you guys can see the current standings. You guys can see the schedule. You guys can see the upcoming matchups. Everything's going to be on there. I'm just still working on it. It's kind of hard to get around to it, but I'll definitely have that done before the end of the season. And yeah, everything you guys can find from me at MMA LOTN on Twitter. That's pretty much it. I'm going to be back next week. I don't even know what the fuck next week is. I think it's the UFC Denver. UFC Denver is next week. I got a couple plays in mind for that, so thankfully the odds are already out. So maybe I may be even making my play for that by the end of the week, or at least after UFC 230 concludes. So be sure to look out for that. Until next week, I'm Karl.